Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Pastor Brian Webb of Faith Walkers Community Church. And so we're so grateful this morning that if you joined us in your virtual sanctuary this morning, we have a word from the Lord this morning. I just want to greet all of you who come on Sunday with us virtually and also in person. Certainly want to say good morning to all of our faith walkers this morning who continue to walk with us, who continue to pray with us, and who continue to support the vision that God has given to us. And we are certainly excited this morning about that because we know that no matter what the forecast appears to be, that God can always push the rain out at any moment. And so we are excited that God is not only going to push the rain out and sunshine comes in so that we can see clear, so that we can see clearly where God is taking us to. But sometimes rain and storms do come, and they will come along the way, but God gives us what we need to overcome those challenges. So good morning to you all. Good to see you all on who are watching with us virtually. Listen, want to jump right into this. The scripture that we are looking at this morning comes from the gospel according to Luke chapter 13, verse 10 through 17. And again, this is the gospel according to Luke chapter 13, verse 10 through 17. It is the NIV version, the New International Version I will be reading. And it reads on this wise. It says, starting with verse 10, it says, on a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, verse 11, and a woman who was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. Verse 12, when Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, woman, you are set free from your infirmity. Verse 13, then he put his hands on her and immediately she straightened up and praised God. Verse 14, indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, the synagogue leader said to the people, there are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath. Verse 15, the Lord answered him, you hypocrites, doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water? Verse 16 says, then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her. Verse 17, when he said this, all his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with all the wonderful things he was doing. Pray y'all still with me. I did see a quick interruption of the service, so just hang on in there with us. I want to speak to you from the topic just for a few minutes. A healing is on the way. A healing is on the way. A healing is on the way. I want you to just think about that for a moment. A healing is on the way. A healing is on the way. Some of us, and many of us, find ourselves in challenging times right now. We find ourselves in challenging circumstances. Somebody has a family member or a friend who needs a healing, who found themselves maybe in the hospital with a particular diagnosis. Some people who have been challenged by something most and majority of their life. I want to encourage you this morning that that a healing is in fact on the way. We recognize this from this story, from this particular passage today, that I want to talk to you about a woman who is in fact in need of a healing. Yes, listen, we cannot look at this woman differently and distinguish her from us today, because if we really think about it, that we ourselves, all of us, need a healing today as well. Yes, we need a healing from many different things. It doesn't have to be just the dramatic freeing of one from demonic control, but it can be healing from childhood trauma. It can be healing from the conditions you were raised around. It could be healing from a number of things. But what I do know is that we all today could use some healing. I know that there's some kids out in Texas who are now growing up and going to become teenagers one day, who are going to need healing from the thing that they witnessed, that they saw somebody come in and look to destroy precious life. Yeah, they will need healing along the way. We can look out into our country today and see how divided it is and how hateful people have become towards one another. We can say that we in fact need a healing today. Well, this woman's life will demonstrate to us that a healing is in fact on the way. And I'm glad to know that despite the conditions I may find myself in currently, that my health is on the way, that I have help on the way. I want to tell somebody that this morning, that just like this woman, your help is in fact on the way. Isn't it good news to know that I have help on the way? Yeah, you have help on the way this morning. This is a woman who had a degenerative disease that was triggered, if you will, by an evil spirit. We see in the word of God, it talks about a woman who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. In other words, this woman here had been affected. Her body was bent over, and she could not, in fact, straighten herself up. Now, I don't want to just gloss over that, because many times we will gloss over the condition of someone else and we will miss the lesson in it. But here it is. Just imagine for a moment, right where you are, get yourself and stand yourself up, then bend yourself over to about 90 degrees. I mean, that alone by itself takes strength to do. That alone is an uncomfortable position to be in. Yet this woman was bent over and she could not straighten herself up. And I just wonder, in her mind, and the things that she had experienced, that for 18 years she may have been a child, a teenager, and grew up 18 years with this degenerative disease, believing this is the way I will be, this is the way that things are, and I got to accept this the way it is. But this woman, I believe, had continual faith. I believe this woman had continual prayer that a healing was in fact on the way. And I can say that this morning, that to somebody, that if you just trust God, if you just stay in his word, if you keep praying, if you just keep on praying, if you keep fasting, if you keep walking with God, God sees your issue. God sees your challenges. God sees what you are in need of. He does not ignore it. And that's why David said, the Lord is my shepherd. This woman not only had an issue, but she had an issue that was triggered by an evil spirit. This condition was not her choice, but she was oppressed and could not heal her own self. I think it's key for us to understand that this was not the woman's choice to be in this position and this condition. And many times I believe that we will see somebody in a particular condition, and we will judge that condition, that they must be in this condition and they must be in this position because of something that they have done. And we got to be very careful of making observations and judgment like that. The Bible clearly tells us, judge not lest ye be judged by the same judgment. In other words, you will be judged just as harshly as you're judging someone. In other words, we cannot have the ability to show compassion to one who's in a bad condition if we do not recognize them as a person and as a human being, but also as an individual who's just going through something. If we blame them for the very, it's like poverty on the streets. Well, some people will say, yeah, I just know they can get a job. I just know that he's a man like me. She's a woman like me. She can walk. She can move around. She can talk. She should be able to get a job. But we don't know the circumstances. We don't know the conditions. We don't know the roads that they had to travel down to get to this place. And we don't, but what I do know this morning, what I can encourage you about this morning, that no matter how you got into a particular condition, that God has sent help on the way. Yes, my healing is on the way. Yeah, this condition was not her choice, but she was oppressed and could not heal herself. The pain, the discomfort she experienced because she could not sleep or walk comfortably. And because her perspective on life was distorted, her dilemma was delaying and debilitating her healing. So it was delaying and debilitating her healing. Her position in life was distorted. Her perspective in life was distorted for the simple fact is she was always bent over, and check this out, watch this now, and could not ever look up. My Lord. A lot of people are still stuck in a particular condition. They are still stuck and waiting on God to do something, but God is waiting on them to simply start looking up. In other words, it sounds simple, but we've been looking down too long. We've been looking too negatively about our circumstances, our situations. We can even, some of us, be on the precipice of losing hope, but God says, I need you to look up. If you just choose to look up, you will see that you have help, and your help is on the way. My healing is on the way. It was her condition that affected her perspective, but it was not until she reevaluated her position that through the pain of all her past that she experienced of 18 years of doctors, 18 years of yoga, 18 years of church, 18 years of this specialist and that specialist. 18 years she was still seen as an odd and strange looking person. She was distinguished from everybody else in her community. Oh, there goes the woman who cannot stand up straight. There goes the woman who's been like that for years. This woman, now elderly, this woman who's older now, but when she reevaluated her position, she then found herself in a place that could produce her healing. When she reevaluated her position, she then found herself in a place that could produce her healing. When we reevaluate the fact that God didn't bring us this far just to leave us here. When we reevaluate the fact that if he said it in his word, we can trust and believe it. If he said no weapon formed against you shall prosper, then you should be singing for joy that something that could have took you out, could have had you dead and gone, but yet God decided to share his mercy and grace on your life. I need a healing, and God is telling me that a healing is on the way. If you just trust my word, a healing can break through. But I need you to believe in order for it to break through. Reevaluate your position. It may look like it's not a good position to be in. You may have started bent over. You may have started looking down, but God is saying, all I need you to do is look up. All I need you to do is reevaluate your position, because no matter what your condition is, if I have been walking with you, if I have been talking with you, if I have told you that I'll never leave you nor forsake you, all I need you to do is look up and see who's next to you. Yeah, your friends may have walked out on you. You may have family members that have turned their back on you, but if you look up, if you come out of that position you're in and look up, begin to look up, you'll see that I've been right there with you the entire time. There's not been 1 year out of the 18 years I have not been with you. Look up. Look up, reevaluate your position and look up. And so she realized that if she was going to properly heal from her past, from this past things, a lot of us cannot heal because we're still carrying the past too deeply. We're still carrying the past too heavily. It's hard for us to heal. This woman, 18 years of being in this condition and this position, she's bent over, she's talked about, she's seen as an oddity, and here it is. This woman is still showing up today in our text just as she is. Now here it is. I'm going to tell you something here. God does truly want us to come to him as we are. Because this is the thing. If this lady had walked into a modern day church today in this condition, someone would be somewhere talking and saying she needs to go to the hospital. she needs to go get some real help. That's what folk would be saying. That's what folk would be saying. They would not be saying, let us pray for her. Let us wrap our arms around her. We would see this dramatic visual of this woman who's stuck in this condition and this position. The text today, and the woman in need of a healing, like many of us who are in need of a healing. I'll be the first to stand up here with you and say, yes, I am in need of a healing. Lord, heal me and heal us from some of our past trauma, some of our past trials, and heal us today from some of our present wounds that we've experienced, being wounded daily, whether it's by the loss of a loved one, whether it's by the hurt of a friend, whether it's by the hurt of church, whatever we're going through, God, I know that you can provide a healing and that a healing is on the way. The text shows us three quick things. One, the person, the problem, and the prescription. And the person we see here is very important to us to take a quick look at this person. We see in verse 10, on a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues. Verse 11 says, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. Now listen, I can pause right there. And park right there because of the simple fact that I appreciate something about this woman, that despite her condition, despite her outward appearance, despite the uncomfortability of her being able to walk and do the basic things, this woman still showed up for church. This woman still made it a point to come into God's house. This woman, despite all her challenges, all her trials, and the things that she's experienced and been through, and guess what? Watch this now. Watch this. The same folk that was calling her odd, the same folk that was saying, look at this woman who looks this way, the same folk who grew up with this woman and even made fun of her, she would see these same people in the church. And this is key to me because too many times people end up leaving the church because they come into church looking for people, my Lord. They come into church looking for people to help them, but people cannot help you. You have to come into the church looking for God. You got to look for God and look for God's power, because when you look for God versus looking for people, people will let you down. People will disappoint you. But God, in the end, will keep you. God, in the end, will hold you. God, in the end, will lift you up. God, in the end, will protect you from your enemies. God will pick you up, turn you around, and set your feet on solid ground. So here it is. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. Before COVID-19, church membership was on a decline nationally, but our text tells us that Jesus did not go to church, but in fact, Jesus himself went to church. Verse 10 says he was teaching in one of the synagogues. So if Jesus went to church, if Jesus went to church, If Jesus himself decided to go to church, then what's wrong with us going to church? Yeah, I know that we have to evolve, we have to change some things, but we cannot get so distracted in a iPhone, Android society, social media, metaverse mentality that we lose the connection of the fellowship with one another as human beings. I said a whole lot there. I'll let you go back and unpack that yourself. This woman had this condition for 18 years and needed a healing. Yeah, this woman had been going through this thing that many of folk could see what she was going through. But sometimes there are some of us who are going through things, who are struggling with stuff that only us, ourselves, and God know about. But I want you to encourage you today that it may have seemed like it's taken a while and it's taken a long time, but God has not ignored your prayers. God has not ignored you calling on him for help. God has not ignored the condition that he sees you in. This woman came to God as she was, in the very condition that she was in. And listen, you cannot get help from God until you come to him in the condition that you're in. Now, you can't ask God for a healing, then you show up, God, I'm all right, everything's okay. I don't need anything, God. I'm okay. God, Paul tells us that we got to go to the throne of grace boldly, that we can boldly declare, God, I need you, God, right now in my life. I can boldly declare that, God, I need this healing because you promised that you would heal my body, God, that you are a healer and deliverer, God, that you could do this for me, God, if you would just touch me, God, I know that healing would come and be within my body, a physical healing, God, just like the woman with the issue of blood. She thought to herself, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, that I would be in fact healed. And there was no power in the hem of his garment. The power was in her belief and faith that Jesus, that God could do it for her. And so the real question today is, do you believe that God can do it for you? If you believe that God can do it for you, then I need you, somebody to type in there, God will do it. God will do it. God will do it. And so verse 12 says, when Jesus saw her, check this out. When Jesus saw her, my Lord, this out of this temple, of this church, there is the choir singing in the back. There are the mothers up front, the deacons up front. There's a packed house in the church. There's a whole house in the church, and the church is singing, and the church is praising God, and the preacher is not got up yet. He's not got up yet, but Jesus is in this church as well, just to come by to see how y'all worship. And this lady comes over, who's bent over, who cannot stand up straight, who begins to take short steps because she's bent over, so she can't take long strides. If she takes strides too long, she'll fall over. And so she got to take her time. She got to suffer in this condition, and she's bowed down, and she's walking up into the church. See, this is the thing, that even though there was time, her condition kept her from seeing God, it did not keep her from hearing God. Hearing God. Sometimes the devil will have you bent up into a position, but I need you to use all of your attributes that God gave you, your sight, your touch, your taste, but your hearing. She could not see him, but she could hear him. Verse 12 says, when Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her. Now listen, check this out. Now, I need you to get this too, that this dramatic scene, this woman is in the building. Everybody else has kind of seen her before. They've seen the oddities, so they see her all the time in church on Sunday. But it's only Jesus who stops everything that everybody's doing and tells the woman to come forward. Your healing is on the way. You can be in position that you cannot see God, but if you trust God, you will be able to hear God. You will be able to hear God's voice lead you even when you cannot see the way. I'm trying to help somebody here this morning that if you just trust God and you listen to his voice, because there will be times and positions you will be in, conditions you may be challenged by that will keep you from being able to see God, but you can in fact hear God. That's when God will begin to speak to you for you to listen to his voice. And I trust God's voice when I cannot see my own way. I listen and trust God's voice. Here it is. God says, Jesus says, he says to the woman, he says, come forward. Now, let me say this about healing, that despite her condition that she was in, dramatic as it looked, she was bent over, she could take short steps, she could not stand up straight, that God didn't say, he didn't rush over to her, Jesus didn't rush over to her and say, oh, let me help you, sweetheart, let me, you stay right there, and I'm going to come to you and heal you. No, God says, come forward to the woman. Come forward. That I want you to know that my voice, that when I call you, that no matter what condition that you are in, no matter what the devil has placed you in bondage of, that when my voice begins to speak in your life, those are chains that have to break loose from holding you down. You don't hear me? He says he called her forward and said to her, woman, you are set free from your infirmities. The other part of this is that God is telling us that we have a responsibility in our own healing. God needs to see that you believe that he can do it. In other words, Jesus could have ran to the woman and said, you wait right there, brother. I'm going to come and touch you and heal you. You stay right there. No, she's been in a position for 18 years. For 18 years, she kept on going to church. For 18 years, she kept on taking care of herself. For 18 years, she did not stop showing up. For 18 years, she lived this way. For 18 years, and God is saying, listen, for 18 years, my grace has been sufficient for you. All I need to see for you is to walk down here. And I want all these folk who've been in here every single Sunday. I want all these folk who've been talking about you for 18 years. I want all these folk in here to see who said that it was your fault that you were in the condition. I want them to see right now as I called you forward. I want them to see your healing. Jesus had to heal her because the place that the woman was coming to had no healing in it. The church was where she was at. Verse 13 says, then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. So Jesus saw her. He called her and set her free. Get in position so that God can see you. Get into position that God can see you. In other words, that if you don't have a prayer life, how can God hear you talking to him? How can God hear your requests? How can God hear your petitions if you are not talking to God? Get yourself in position. Fasting. If God sees that you are sacrificing in order that you need to hear from him, that you need something for God to do within your life, God will see you. And I love the fact that we serve a God who, the bigger our problems are, the more God is going to take a good look at us. There are some problems that are too big for people to handle with us. They get scared. They get afraid. It gets too much. We are only human beings. But God, the bigger the problem, the more God is going to look down on you. God does not ignore us in conditions when we need his help. Your healing is on the way. You see, this woman was like this for 18 years, but she got herself into a position that God could see her. She still showed up at church. She didn't care about the other folk who saw her, who was looking at her, who may have been talking about her. She says, as long as I get in position here that God can see me, doesn't matter what people say about me, doesn't matter what people will not do for me, it doesn't matter about what these people have condemned me of and said that I'm the problem here. I've been living with this thing for 18 years. For as long as I can remember, I've been this way, and I've been calling on God to heal my body. I've even asked the question, Lord, why have I been done this way? Why have I been put in this position? But God is saying to the person who feels this way, you just hold on for a little while longer. I am on the way, and I'm not on the way by myself. I come with healing. I come with grace. I come with mercy. I come with love. I come with joy. I come with whatever you are in need of. It's on the way right now. Yeah, that's enough to celebrate for me. Somebody ought to say that it's on the way. See, the devil wants you to check out before your victory shows up. The devil wants you to quit before the race is over. But God said the race is not given to the swift. It's not given to the mighty. It's only given to the one who endures. And so it's time. This woman endured for 18 years, and she continued to put herself in position that even though she could not see God, God could see her. God could see her. And so let it be seen by the Lord. In other words, whatever you're dealing with, turn it over to God. Whatever you're dealing with, turn it over to God. Place it in his hands. Let him carry and shoulder the burden for you. Because, see, my mind can't handle it all. My strong as I am lifting weights and stuff, my body is still too weak to handle the burdens of sin, to handle the burdens of judgment, to handle the burdens of what God's position is in my life. But God tells me I don't have to handle it. He tells me just trust me and put it in my hands, and I will take you there. We've been working too hard for our healing. You trying to get there, but God has sent it, and it's on the way. It's on the way. The healing is on the way. And so let God see your condition as it is. And that's why we like to say, we're not talking about the clothes you wear when we say to the church, come as you are. We're not talking about that. We're talking about bring all that stuff that's pent up in you, all the struggles you've been going through with your children or with your family, all the struggles you're going through with your job, your career, all the struggles you've been going through with your physical body, maybe sickness and illness. God says you can lay that all at the altar. If you come as you are, you can turn it over to me. You come in your condition, and then I will heal you of your condition. That's why when you come in as you are, but you ought to not ever leave out the same way you came in the door. In other words, when you come in one way. You can come in. That's why it says come as you are, because every Sunday we may wake up with something new that we're bothered by, that we're challenged by, something we went through the whole weekend. And every Sunday we got a new opportunity to wake up and give it all over to God and say, here, God, take this for me, God. Here, shoulder this burden for me, God. Lord, heal my body, God. These problems that we have that are problems for us are easy solutions for God. In other words, it's easy for God to heal your body today. It's easy for God to pull you out of certain conditions. It's easy for God to take your body, which was bent over, and straighten it out, as he's going to do with this woman. Those are not hard things for God, but because you view them as hard, God is saying, I can't help you until you believe. And that's why he called the woman forward first. He didn't run to her. He says, woman, come forward, because I need you to know that the devil has had you in bondage. But when I call you, even though you could not see me because of the position you were in, you were bent over and distorted. He had you bound in bondage. But when my voice began to speak to you, you heard me. And when my voice speaks, whatever I'm commanding you to do, you have to be empowered to believe you can do it, because this is God speaking, and that all power is in my hands, including to set you free from this infirmity. In other words, you have to expose your wounds and let and to God so he can see them. Wounds don't truly heal being covered up by a Band-Aid. After a while, you have to take the Band-Aid off and allow the wound to breathe and heal. Allow God to see it and answer it for you. This woman, God called to the altar. This woman, God, who visually everybody in the church could see, been in this condition. Some of the children had nicknames probably for the woman, called her different things because that's how they saw her. You yourself, have you ever been in a condition where you were in it for so long that it's all people saw in you and treated you that a certain way? They treated you not like the person you are, but they treated you like the condition that you were in. Yes, I can imagine this woman had certain humiliations, and she would walk up to simple things just to go get groceries, that she would be bent over. That even though some children she would be literally taller than and maybe could not, because now they were taller than her because she was bent over in this position, that she could not extend her body to her full height. And that's what the devil wants to do. Because if you look at our text today, this woman was not bound by some of her decisions, but the word of God says she was bound by a spirit. And Jesus identifies the spirit as Satan, who has bound this woman up like this. And what the devil wants to do in your life is, because he wants you to bind you in such a way that you are not able to maximize your gifts, your talents, your treasures that God has placed within you to blossom one day, for you to stand in, to walk in your purpose that God has for you. That's what the devil wants to do. He wants to stop you from your purpose because he don't want you to maximize the gifts that God has placed within you. Because if you begin to maximize the gifts that God has placed within you, not only are you going to touch, your body will be healed, your household is going to be touched, but your friend's household, your family's household, everywhere you go, you're going to have an impact that says God did it, my Lord. Listen, if you've been in a condition for a long time, if you've been struggling with something for a long time, I want you to know that God has not ignored you. God has not turned his head away from you, but God has in fact sent a healing on the way, that there is a healing on the way, that God has a plan and purpose for your life. And so all they saw in this woman was someone with no money. All they saw was this woman in this church. She had no job. All they saw was maybe the drug addict, the homeless person. All they saw, the person with COVID, the person with cancer, all they saw was an illness, and all they saw was maybe a liar, a cheater, a loser. Have you ever tried to improve your condition and realize some people around you aren't supportive of the change or don't believe you can in fact change? Many times the problem that prevents healing are not with God, but are with the people who block other people's blessings. Yeah, but God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that leads me to my second point, the problem. What was the problem? Verse 14 and 16 says, indignant. This is the leader of the church now. This is the temple leader. This is the pastor, if you will. He's indignant, the word of God says. He's angry. He's upset. Why is he angry? Why is he upset? Because Jesus has healed this woman on the Sabbath. The synagogue leader said to the people, there are 6 days for work. So come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath, my Lord. In other words, Monday through Friday is our hours. You can come by and pick up some food from the church. You can come by and if you need some kind of assistance in the home, if you need us to partner you with some kind of organization that can help you with your circumstances right now, I need you to do it on a Monday through Friday, because the church is, in fact, it's closed on Sunday. And so if you show up on a Sunday, you're just out of luck. And God is saying that's not how my church operates, because I don't operate that way. I'm a 24-hour kind of God, every 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Yeah, I'm an everyday God. I'm on the job all the time. And if you represent me as my church, then I need you to understand that I can heal on Monday or I can heal on Sunday. It doesn't matter what day I heal on. All that matters is that the healing comes. Here it is. These folk was more caught up on the fact that he had the nerve to heal this woman in their presence on the Sabbath. And so what Jesus did in front of them is, I'm about to show you something that the traditions that you're holding on to, how hard you're holding on to those traditions don't even make sense, because isn't it better to heal this woman that even though it's on the Sabbath? Isn't it better to heal this woman who's been this way for 18 years? And matter of fact, how many Sabbaths have this woman walked into this same church and nobody has offered her prayer? Nobody has offered her compassion. Nobody has encouraged her and told her that her healing is in fact on the way. No. That's not how my house will run. That's not how God's house works. It's 24/7, 7-11, I believe it was called, because it was open all the time. God is open all the time. God does not close. Here it is. I'm telling somebody right now, you may feel like it's taking too long. You may feel like it's going over to the overdue point where God, it ain't going to help at this point. But God can change your circumstances in an instant. God, it can take 18 years, but after 18 years, what had happened? This woman was touched by God. This woman was called forward by God. She was touched by God. And then the word says it didn't take another 18 years for her to be healed, but in fact, in their presence, everybody could see this. It says immediately she straightened up and stood forward. And that's why we need God touching our children's lives. That's why we need God touching our kids who are out here in the streets today. Our children who are killing not only other folk, but killing one another in the streets today with gun violence. We need God to heal them from the trauma of the past and their childhood. We need God to get into them homes. We need God to get into the hearts of our community, because when God lays his hands on you, it does not matter how crooked you've been walking, not matter how crooked you've been talking, immediately you straighten up. Want to straighten up? She straightened up. She straightened up. So they were mad. Why are you mad? Why are you mad? Because something good has occurred. Are you mad because you didn't do it? Are you mad because it didn't create more money for the church? In fact, but this woman had a free healing, free health care to take place. Spontaneous surgery God did within their presence and on the Sabbath. Because God is bigger than tradition. And God is bigger than the Sabbath. Verse 16, and I'm going to go ahead and get ready to close out here. Verse 7 says, Jesus called out those folks. Jesus, let me read it again. Jesus called out those folk. He called them out. And see, this is the other part about why we don't have to engage with folk who don't mean us well. Why we don't have to get caught up on their tradition and their stuff, because it was God himself who called these people out. We can get caught up into kind of trying to run around and call other folks' stuff out. And even though they may be doing some stuff, when we get our attention diverted to what they're doing, then we take our attention off of what God is trying to have us do in our own life. And so you don't want to be distracted in that way. he says, he calls them out in verse 15. See, God can see everything. You can tell people whatever you want. You can get over on people, but who you cannot get over on is God. It says, verse 15, the Lord answered him, you hypocrites. Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your donkey, your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water? In other words, you ain't letting your donkey that you keep on the Sabbath stay tied up if it needs water, because that's your financial ability, how you keep financial resources in your pocket, your donkey, your cattle. And so he said, you untie those to take them to get some water on the Sabbath. Now, how is it that you can take your donkey to get some water on the Sabbath, but for this woman, this person, this human being who's been in this condition for 18 years that you had to know about, she's be the first thing in the church you could tell and see because of how she was bent over? Yes, here it is. You rather a donkey be untied and get water than this person be healed by me, my Lord. My Lord. There's something wrong with that kind of tradition. There's something wrong when it's willing, when you got to hold on to it so hard that you're willing to let something bad happen to somebody. That you got to hold on to it so hard that you're unwilling to let go and help somebody. My Lord. So stop allowing tradition to lead you to tragedy and let theology lead you through tradition. Not that traditions aren't good, but we know how we have to separate what are the traditions of man from what are the traditions of God. You see, if you let Jesus in the house, no matter what day it is, anything that is in bondage will be set free. That's the thing. We're trying to solve the world's problems, which is spiritual, with practicality, with money, with government programs. But the reality is our children, our community, our country, our world, it needs a healing. We need a healing. The planet itself, it needs a healing. And I cannot believe that the God I serve don't hear us crying out to him. I cannot believe that the God I serve is not on the way with his healing. So this woman, she placed herself in a position that God could see her and her condition. In other words, when you want a blessing from God, when you want something to change, you need a shift underneath your feet for things to change, because everything you've been doing, everything you've been working at has not been taking you exactly to the place you want to be. And you need God to shift the ground beneath you in order to take you there. God to show you a clear path, but God needs to see you the way you are. God needs to see the very condition that you're in. God does not make the strong stronger, but God makes the weak strong, because he says it is in your weakness that I make you strong. And the reason why God needs to see you in this condition and this way, because if he sees you in a condition that you appear to be standing on your own feet, if he sees you in a position that you see that you appear that you did it yourself, then you yourself may believe that it was not God, but it was you, that you stop depending and leaning on the power of God and you start leaning on your stuff. No, I can't heal myself. I can't heal you, but I know who can heal you. Jesus called the religious folks who opposed him from healing the woman on the Sabbath day hypocrites. Verse 17 says, when he said this, all his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with all the wonderful things that he was doing. Let me tell you something here, that you may have been going through a season of struggle, but healing is on the way. You may have been going through a season of challenge, but healing is on the way. And yeah, there may be some people, there may be some folk in your life who may not be for your healing, who may not be for your elevation, but God calls them out, and God tells them not only to step off and to step out the way, but I got a plan and purpose for this woman. Yeah, you talked about this woman and said it must have been her fault, but it was never her fault. This woman has been preserved for the glory of God, because today I'm about to show you it's not just about you, but there's this influence, there's this invisible spirit called Satan, the devil, that I need to deal with today. That in my house, in my house on the Sabbath, I'm going to set this woman free from the power of Satan. I'm going to set this woman free from 18 years of debilitating physical illness. I'm about to set her free in God's house, because I want the devil to know today that whatever power you think you have, I got all power in my hands. I got the power in my hands to heal your body. I got the power in my hands to wait 4 days till Lazarus died, stand at the front of the tomb and call him by his name, and he stands up and walks from death back into life. I got the ability and the power to change your circumstance today. I can heal your body. If it's in your feet, I can heal your feet. If it's in your hands, I can heal your hands. If it's in your heart and lungs, I can heal your entire body. I can heal your entire body. I can heal your entire body. And so God is telling us today and encouraging us today through this woman's story, that a healing is in fact on the way. A healing is in fact on the way. And so whatever you're going through today, trust God, reevaluate your position, and in reevaluating your position, you will see that God has in fact never left you. That sometimes that when we're challenged with the condition that we in, we can feel all alone. But for 18 years, this woman was never left alone. God was there the entire time. And when it mattered the most, God showed up. And as they say, God showed out. The healing is on the way, y'all. Be encouraged today. A healing is on the way. I'm Pastor Brian Webb, pastor of Faith Walkers Community Church. I pray that you will continue to stick and stay with us as we continue to work out the kinks of social media and these online platforms and things that we need to do to continue to provide for you every Sunday a virtual sanctuary experience. Again, we do one in person a month where we come together, and every other Sunday is in our virtual sanctuary. So please continue to talk to others and encourage them to come out for a word today. The word was, or the topic was, a healing on the way. And I want you to go out through your day to whoever you may know who may be challenged today, who may be experiencing some sickness or illness, or maybe it's you yourself, that I want you just to not only ponder, but to keep those words in your heart, mind, and soul, that a healing is on the way. And those of us who may not be in that condition or those circumstances, we want to continue to pray for those for that healing, that we want to petition God for those who are in need of such a healing. But I know He can, and I know He will. Again, thank you again for joining us this Sunday. I'm Pastor Brian Webb, pastor of Faith Walkers Community Church. I will see you next Sunday in our virtual sanctuary. God bless you and keep you.